The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
We have the biggest deregulation in American history happening during the show today. We'll have the details with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and President Trump making a huge announcement. White House border czar Tom Homan says mission accomplished in Minneapolis as he ends the metro surge. And the Save America Act has passed the United States House. Will it get through the Senate? We ask Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee in just a few minutes. Today is Thursday, February 12th, the birthday of our beloved President Abraham Lincoln. You are listening to Common Sense for the American People. This is Scott Jennings reporting to you here on Salem. Topping the news this hour, White House border czar Tom Homan announced this morning in Minneapolis that Operation Metro Surge has ended there and that it is mission accomplished for the federal government. Over 4,000 violent illegal aliens were taken off the streets, plus thousands of lost migrant children were located and saved. Here's Tom Homan, cut 13.
In addition to taking public safety threats off the street, ICE here in this state have located 3,364 missing unaccompanied alien children. Children that the last administration lost and weren't even looking for. That's because of the leadership of President Trump, these children were located.
Homan also spent time debunking the myths that are floating around out there about ICE enforcement. Let's listen to that in cut 12.
I want to say something about the various unfounded complaints I'm hearing about ICE enforcement operations. During the surge operation, ICE has not arrested anybody inside a hospital. We have not arrested anybody inside of a school, an elementary school. We have not arrested anybody inside a church. As a matter of fact, the only ones that disrespected the sanctuary of a church were the agitators that have been arrested and prosecuted, and so far we have 9 of them. However, those locations are not off the table. I said from day one, there's no sanctuary for a significant public safety threat or national security threat. But as far as those stories about ICE going into churches and arresting people in hospitals, it simply has not happened. And if you have a case where it happened, do you let me know? Because all the digging I've done here, I can't find a single one.
A lot of propaganda, but there's the truth from Tom Homan. So why is he able to end the surge in Minnesota? Well, ultimately, it's cooperations agreements with local sheriffs and jails. Homan went there, and he got it for the president. Last night on the floor of the U.S. House, the Save America Act passed. The vote was 218 to 213. All the Republicans and one Democrat, Henry Cuellar of Texas, voted for it. I wound up in a wild debate on CNN last night over this. Bottom line, what I've learned this week is that Democrats, the American left, think that if you are black, married, female, or rural, you are too stupid to figure out how to show an ID and vote. Take a listen to cut 15.
Many Americans don't have access to their birth certificate. Many women, a majority of women who change their names for marriage have to provide additional proof that they've changed their legal names in order to register to vote.
I have heard
so
Democrats
Scott, why don't you actually respond to the substance of what I'm saying?
I am, and
as
the substance
opposed
is
to
this.
making this about something that it's not.
You're saying,
it's not just about voter ID.
married
it's
women,
also about
black
who has
voters,
access
and rural people
to...
are too stupid to figure out how to register to vote.
No, that's not.
That is not what Democrats have been making this argument all along.
That is not what she said.
Democrats losing their minds on this issue, making one specious argument after another. Sometimes it's just best to let them unspool in their own words. Here's one of them, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez. She says if you support voter ID, well, you're a white supremacist. Cut 4.
Look, as I hear my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, what I hear is the same racist, misogynistic trash, different decade. Republicans are invoking historical policies intended, let's be clear, to disenfranchise Americans, especially working people, women, students, indigenous people, and anyone who can't afford the burdens of a new bill. The Save America Act is yet another Republican attempt to intimidate and suppress the votes of anyone who threatens their extremist white supremacist agenda.
Here's another Democrat, Catherine Clark. Now, she's in their party leadership in the House. Women especially, listen up. She says you are too dumb to be trusted with the simple paperwork tasks related to voting. Here's cut 5.
They're trying to say this is a voter ID bill. That's not what's happening here. Let's just look at a typical mom. You guys must know some working mothers. The ones that I hear from across my district and across this country, they are struggling to put food on the table for their kids, working 2 jobs to try and make ends meet, trying to juggle getting their kids to school, maybe catching an occasional game, fearing they're never going to be able to find childcare they can afford, and praying nobody in the family gets sick because they can't afford a doctor either. And now you're going to say to those women, because they got married and changed their names, they have to go down to a clerk and prove they're citizens, sign affidavits, do this in person? This is a minefield of red tape that you have put in front of women and American citizens.
And here's another one still. Georgia Democrat Nikema Williams says black voters are simply too lazy to figure out how to show ID to vote. Here's cut 8.
The SAVE Act would make it harder for millions of Americans to get registered to vote by requiring in-person registration at elections offices, government offices with government hours, y'all. This is a burden for caregivers and any hardworking American with a 9-to-5 job. Y'all, the SAVE Act is an unfunded mandate to silence voters. The goal of this bill is voter suppression, plain and simple. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this terrible bill.
Working people, working mothers, rural people, black voters, listen up. This is what the Democratic Party thinks of you. But Republicans did carry the day on the House floor. Majority Leader Steve Scalise of Louisiana erupted on these outlandish arguments. Cut 6.
Representatives led by Republicans came together tonight and said, we will protect the sanctity of your vote. And it's so important. You know, you think about the military veteran who risked his life overseas to defend our freedoms. He comes back home and his vote will be stolen if somebody's able to vote illegally. And it happens. I come from a state where our elections commissioner was sent to federal prison. We all know it goes on, and how can you protect it? And then when you listen to the arguments by the Democrats, it was some of the most embarrassing, hypocritical debate you could hear. They're talking about voter suppression. Well, let me tell you, and it's been brought up. Try getting on an airplane and flying home tonight without showing a picture ID. Try going into a bar without showing a picture ID. Try getting into the Democrat National Convention without showing an ID.
All right, what happens to the Save America Act now? Well, it's on to the Senate, and Senate Majority Leader John Thune is now co-sponsoring the legislation. He was on Fox this morning, cut 16.
They can cry and lament this actually being voted on, but I'd be hard-pressed to have to defend a position that doesn't believe that you have to be an American citizen to vote in an American election.
That makes 44 Senate Republicans co-sponsoring out of 53 in the chamber. Now, Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee is coming up on this show at the bottom of this hour, 33 minutes past the hour. We'll ask her, what are the chances of passage in the Senate? But I ask you, dear listener, to ask yourself a simple question. Why are Democrats and their leaders dying on this hill? 83% of the American people want voter ID. 76% of black voters want voter ID. There is no constituency for the Democratic position here. Well, except for one. There is one constituency for it. And because, unlike Democrats, I think you are a smart person, I will let you answer that question for yourself. It's Scott Jennings here, Common Sense for the American People on Salem. A word about aches and pains today. This word coming in from Tom in Texas, 85 years old. Pain was keeping Tom from riding his bike and also flying small aircraft. He was a flight instructor, in fact. But after taking Relief Factor, he says his lower back pain and his hip pain are virtually gone. He even had long-standing trigger finger issues that are improving. Take it from Tom in Texas, and take it from me, yours truly, Scott Jennings. We're using Relief Factor in the Jennings household. My father, in fact, has been an adherent to Relief Factor for months. I talk to him about it almost every day. He's down in Florida right now for a couple of months, playing golf, having an active lifestyle with his friends. Before he left on his trip, he said to me, Scott, I've packed everything, but I need to make sure I have enough Relief Factor, because he knows what a difference it's making in his life. My advice, try the 3-week quick start. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or visit relieffactor.com. I think it's going to make a difference. Take it from Scott. Take it from Scott's dad. Take it from Tom in Texas, working for thousands of people. Speaking of Relief Factor, the Relief Factor Pain of the Week coming up next. Common Sense on Salem. Stay with us.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
One man standing tall against the leftist mob. Here's Scott Jennings.
It is Thursday, February 12th. Common Sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here, and I sincerely thank you for joining us. It is time, once again, for our Relief Factor Pain of the Week. That was it. Because legitimately, I've been asking for official radio sound effects and television graphics for this for days and weeks, and I literally had to recruit someone to come in who's in literal pain. Yeah. And I'm doing it here. We're doing it live. The Relief Factor Pain of the Week. As you know, every week we will highlight someone, a politician usually, somebody who is causing me pain. Last week it was the ICE Watch street blockade people. They were causing everyone in Minneapolis pain. And here's this week's Pain of the Week. The most calculated, fake, wolves in sheep clothing politicians on the left. One of the most dishonest trends in American politics right now, watching Democrats suddenly discovering religion not as a source of humility or moral restraint, but as a shield or a rationalization of some of the most extreme policies in the country. It's a 3-for-1. It's a triple dip. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, James Tallarico, candidate in Texas, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver. They all believe they have the moral high ground. They are wolves in sheep's clothing. Let's start with Beshear, a man who wants you to believe that he is some devout Bible-quoting moderate, while he is backing policies wildly out of step with basic moral reasoning, let alone traditional Christian teachings. And when anyone pushes back, the thin-skinned Beshear gets really upset. He says, "How dare you? My faith tells me this child mutilation is correct." Let's hear Andy Beshear justifying just that. Here's cut 9.
But we rarely talk about the why. People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves.
Yeah.
And that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. Yeah. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. Yeah. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
Yeah.
Andy Beshear says if you want to be a good Samaritan, you have to go along with child mutilation. Very Christian. But these Democrats have figured out something very cynical. If you wrap up these radical policy ideas in religious language, people on the left, like the folks there at The View, will clap like seals because they have no idea what's going on in the first place. Look at the policies they're trying to sanctify here. Late-term abortion, gender transition for minors, undermining parental rights, forcing religious institutions to comply with mandates that violate their beliefs. It wasn't that long ago that faith-driven Andy Beshear was sending the state police to churches on Easter during COVID to write down your license plate for going to church. Now, let's talk Tallarico in Texas. He's using the Bible to justify abortion. Listen to this malarkey. Here's cut 10.
But I say all this in context of abortion because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent, which is remarkable. I mean, go back and read this in Luke. I mean, the angel comes down and asks Mary if this is something she wants to do. And she says, if it is God's will, let it be done. Let it be. Let it happen. So to me, that is an affirmation in one of our most central stories that creation has to be done with consent.
Tallarico says that God asked Mary if she wanted an abortion. These are actual Democrats. This is not AI. I'm not making this up. But not to be outdone, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver asked Todd Lyons this theological question. Cut 1.
Let me ask you some questions that you may be able to answer. Mr. Lyons, do you consider yourself a religious man?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, how do you think Judgment Day will work for you with so much blood on your hands?
I'm not going to entertain that question.
Oh, okay, of course not. Do you think you're going to hell, Mr. Lyons?
I'm not going to entertain.
Of course not. How many government...
The gentlelady will suspend. The gentlelady will suspend.
Chairman?
A gentlelady will suspend. As I said, the issues we're debating here are important to ones that members feel deeply about.
Thank you.
While vigorous disagreement is part of the legislative process, members are reminded that we must adhere to established standards of decorum and debate. The witnesses are here voluntarily.
All right.
And I will continue to remind members.
If you're in as much pain as we are, get Relief Factor, 1-800-4RELIEF, or go to ReliefFactor.com. That is the Relief Factor Pain of the Week. Marsha Blackburn is next. Stay with us. Hey, it's Scott, and I'm so excited to welcome Crowd Health as a new partner to the Scott Jennings Show. For several years, I'm hearing more people voicing frustration with traditional health insurance. Bad incentives baked into Obamacare have sent costs soaring. The rules are a maze of jargon, and people feel stuck. That's why I want to tell you about my new partner, Crowd Health. Crowd Health isn't insurance. It's a community that cuts out the middleman to help one another fund medical expenses, giving you more freedom, fewer surprises, and greater control over your healthcare choices. And when it comes to cost, members are spending hundreds less per month compared to traditional insurance. Right now, you can get started for just $99 per month for your first 3 months when you use the code SCOTT. Go to joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com and use code SCOTT. Again, joincrowdhealth.com, code SCOTT. Quick reminder, Crowd Health is not insurance. You can opt out, take your power back, and that is how we win.
Conversations and stories you simply won't hear from the mainstream media. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Breaking news into the show. 3 more Republican senators have signed on as co-sponsors of the Save America Act. Tim Scott, Roger Wicker, and Shelley Moore Capito. That brings the total to 48. And one of the champions of Save America, Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, will join us in just a moment. We'll find out what the chances of passage are in the Senate. First, a quick word on America's 250th anniversary. As we reflect on this, it's worth revisiting one of the most powerful ideas that came from our founding fathers, the idea of the pursuit of happiness. Our founders envisioned a country where you have the freedom to work hard, raise a family, and worship freely. They did not want big government. They did not want big, onerous programs. They did not want a bunch of handouts. And our friends at Americans for Prosperity believe the pursuit of the American dream is a core part of what makes this country exceptional. And that's why I am proud to partner with AFP. If you believe in the American dream and you wish to celebrate it, I would advise you to go to a250toolkit.com. And that's where Americans are sharing their story of how to keep the American dream alive. Go to a250toolkit.com. Learn more. Share your own story. The American dream is not a big government program. It is our own individual pursuit of happiness. Scott Jennings is with you here on Salem. It is Thursday, February 12th. It is Abraham Lincoln's birthday, the greatest Kentuckian, from where I broadcast this show today. Happy birthday to Honest Abe. We have big doings in Washington, and here to discuss, Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee. Senator, thank you for joining us. Let me start with the breaking news. The Save America Act passed the House last night, and it is now on to the Senate. We have 48 senators now co-sponsoring it. Can this pass the United States Senate? Senator Blackburn, thanks for being here.
Yes, we think that we can pull together the votes. As you said, the co-sponsor list is growing. And for those of us that have worked on the SAVE Act and have fought this issue of those illegally in the country being able to vote in our elections, for those of us who have worked to preserve one person, one vote, and to make certain that we make it easier to vote and harder to cheat, it is imperative that we pass the Save America Act. And so we're continuing to whittle away at it. Our goal is to get it to the floor. Everybody should be for this. Everybody, whether you're a Republican, Independent, Democrat, you should support making certain that only citizens vote in our U.S. elections.
Senator Thune, our Republican leader in the Senate, signed on as a co-sponsor this morning. What are you hearing from Senator Thune's office and the leadership about when and how this may come to the floor?
I think that when we come back after a week, we will be in our states for a week, and I think you're going to see it go to the floor. I think you're also going to see measures that would eliminate funds going to sanctuary cities, because those are cities that are working outside of the rule of law.
Senator Blackburn, we're hearing a lot of arguments from Democrats right now that are rather silly, in my opinion, that somehow black voters, women who are married, rural voters, I've been told, they say none of these people will be able to figure out how to vote if this bill passes. Do you care to obliterate these arguments?
And you have to have an ID for just about everything you do. You go to the doctor's office, you show an ID. You sign up for government benefits, you show an ID. You go to your child's school to have lunch with your child or to pick your child up from school. You show an ID. This is a process that we do often, every day. And I think that it is really quite disrespectful to say there are some people that won't have an ID, can't get an ID, would be disenfranchised from voting. Everyone has an ID. And so it is important that we make certain that we know who is casting a vote and that they are U.S. citizens.
Senator Blackburn, you have, switching gears to healthcare topics, you have long been a vocal supporter and a leading sponsor of what we call PBM reform. PBMs are pharmacy benefit managers, something of a middleman in the purchase of prescription drugs for consumers. This was signed into law recently by President Trump after a very long fight. Can you tell us about this PBM reform and how it is going to benefit consumers, how it will lower drug prices for the average American?
Yes, Scott, thank you so much for asking about that. Pharmacy benefit managers are the middlemen, as President Trump appropriately calls them. And what they do is take the rebate from the pharmaceutical company for themselves and split it with the insurance company, and the patient ends up paying the full price. And in President Trump's desire to lower the price of pharmaceuticals, he has worked with me on PBM reform. And after several years, we were able to get it across the line. Here is what it will do. It puts these pharmacy benefit managers at a flat fee. In other words, instead of getting a $100 rebate, they will get maybe a $5, $7 flat fee for processing that request for pharmaceuticals. Also, there's a provision called any willing provider. What we have seen is the consolidation in these PBM markets where they restrict certain pharmaceuticals, and maybe your doctor tells you you need a certain pharmaceutical and they won't give it to you. They only give you what they want you to have, and they tell you only go to one of the big pharmacies to get it. You can't use the pharmacy in your local hometown, the independent pharmacy. So this is an any willing provider provision, which means if you live in rural America, you can go to the pharmacy in your hometown and do business with them. And if the doctor says you need a certain thing, that pharmacy can get that certain thing for you. So this is a big win for healthcare freedom, for individuals to be able to get the pharmaceuticals they need when they need them, where it is most convenient for them to get them.
Thanks for that information on PBM reform. I think this was undercovered, frankly, and it is a huge deal, as you mentioned, especially for rural America. Shifting gears and revisiting an old topic, the Arctic frost situation. You remember Arctic frost. This was the uncovering of the Biden administration spying on Republicans across Washington, including many members of Congress and the United States Senate. Senator Blackburn, there was a hearing on Arctic frost, an update on this week. Can you give us an update on what we have found out additionally?
Oh, yes. You know, I chaired this hearing. It is the first of the hearings we are doing to look at what happened with Arctic frost. And we had the telecom companies, the wireless companies, Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T in front of us. And as your audience knows, they turned over phone records of several members of Congress, plus 430 individuals and organizations, all conservative. And the one thing of the people that Arctic frost went after, all of us were conservatives and all supported President Donald Trump. This was all part of the fishing expedition on President Trump. So we were able to move forward with the hearing to find out why they did it. Jack Smith actually went to court and got a court order, a subpoena for our telephone records, the tolling records. This is the information of who we called or who we received a call from, how long the call lasted, and where we were physically located when we took the call. Now, we still do not know if they ever turned over information on text and emails, and that is information that we are still requesting, and we don't know how far-reaching some of those subpoenas could have been. We do know they did go after banking records for Turning Point USA and for Citizens United. And what we want to do is make certain that the federal government is never, ever weaponized against the U.S. citizen again, like it was weaponized against President Trump and conservatives. And we also know that Judge Boasberg gave a subpoena to get our records. DOJ Legal told Jack Smith there were problems with abridging the speech and debate clause. In doing this, he did it anyway, and to make certain we never found out about it, he had Judge Boasberg slap a non-disclosure order on top of the subpoena, which meant that the telecom companies could never tell us. And of course, here we are, and we've had whistleblowers who have brought this information forward, and now we know what they did. It was not only unethical, it was illegal. It infringed on our privacy, on the Stored Communications Act. It abridged the speech and debate clause, and we intend to get to the bottom of it. I had a good hearing. I was pleased to chair that hearing, and, you know, there's going to be more to come.
Senator, we have about 30 seconds. Do you believe you were personally spied on by the Biden administration?
Oh, yes, we know we were, because we know they got those records. They got my phone records. We don't know if they got banking records, and we don't know if they got email content. But, yes, we do know they got our telephone records, so they know everybody that I talked to. And they, if I called my children, they had that. If I called a member of my team, they had that.
Unbelievable. Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee, thank you for joining us with all these breaking news updates from Washington. And Senator Blackburn, you're also a candidate for governor in Tennessee. We'll mention that as well. We look forward to having you back. This is Scott Jennings on Salem. When we come back, we are still tracking these awful instances of illegal aliens getting commercial driver's licenses and then killing people in terrible accidents in semi-tractor trailers on American highways. We have a new report on this. You need to hear it. Stay with us. It's common sense for the American people. We'll be right back.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
More breaking news into the show as we speak. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is speaking with President Trump. They are ending the Obama-era climate endangerment finding. This is a huge story. We'll bring you live audio and video from this announcement in the next hour of the show. Big story in Washington today. We're also still tracking these issues of illegal aliens who are somehow getting commercial driver's licenses, driving semi-tractor trailers, and killing people on American highways. My next guest is journalist Jenny Terre. She's from the Daily Wire. She's the Daily Wire's immigration reporter, and she has a new piece of reporting. The headline is Illegal Immigrant Truckers Hauling Amazon Trailers Tied to Major Crashes. Jenny, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. Thank you for being here, and tell us, what is your story today?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for covering this really important issue. You know, we've seen over the last few months, time and time again, these illegal immigrant truck drivers getting into these really devastating crashes, some that have tragically turned fatal. I've been tracking this for that length of time since we started learning about it, from the Harjinder Singh case in Florida to now, when we've just seen this continue to mount. But this is the latest case is involving Amazon trailers. So I was contacted by a woman in Georgia. She had been hit actually a couple years ago by a truck driver, and he was hauling an Amazon trailer at the time. She didn't really think anything about the case until it was later discovered that he didn't have the proper insurance. He didn't have insurance at all at the time. And then it later came to light through some surveillance video from those officers that had issued him a citation for crashing into her, that he was speaking a foreign language on the phone when he was trying to communicate with those officers. We were reviewing that footage. We were able to get it translated and see that he was speaking Uzbek and he was speaking Russian. And so that had all of the signs that we see in these cases, and started to go into it a little bit more. And we found that, you know, this guy came across the border illegally under the Biden administration. He is from Uzbekistan, but he's not the only one who is caught up in stories like this, where he's contracted, his company is contracted by Amazon, and he's hauling, you know, our deliveries across the country that you and I all consume pretty much every day for a lot of people. There was a crash back in March that we also looked into. This was an Eritrean national who allegedly killed 5 people in Austin, Texas, including a child and an infant. This person is under investigation for this, and Amazon has also been caught up in a lawsuit from some of the victims. So these stories, this person came actually as a refugee, tried to apply for a green card, was denied. This person did not have status anymore, so he's here illegally, and he was still driving one of these commercial trucks. Now, in the first case I mentioned, that guy had a Pennsylvania-issued commercial driver's license, so he was legitimized by a blue state in that case.
Jenny, you're connecting Amazon to this, and there are a lot of Amazon trucks on the road. Help me understand something. Are the truck drivers who are driving the trucks, are they employees of Amazon, or are they contractors, or how does that work?
No, so they're not employees of Amazon. Amazon is contracting work through private trucking companies, and they do this with everyday deliveries too, that they're, contracting just civilians to use their cars to go drop something off at your house. In this case, they were picking up a trailer that had Amazon products in it and were moving it across the country. So they see in a lot of cases that everything checks out on paper, that this person has a commercial driver's license, that they were vetted by a state to be issued that. In a lot of cases, we haven't seen a lot of red flags that these companies may be seeing. So this is a case where Amazon may unknowingly be doing this, but they are contracting out so much work that there has to be questions about all these stories coming to light and what is their role in this, and are they starting to look into this like the Trump administration has been?
Yeah, it sounds like there are a lot of loopholes and breakdowns at the state level. These states that are issuing these CDLs to illegal aliens, people in those states, people all over the country need to be worried about this. Jenny Taer, the immigration reporter for the Daily Wire, find her on X at Jenny S. Taer, and that's Taer. Not a traditional pronunciation, but not traditional spelling. Thanks for joining us today. That's it for this hour. More breaking news when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Thursday, February 12th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings broadcasting from Louisville, Kentucky today here on Salem. Let's give you a quick check of the most important headlines of the day. We'll start in Washington. As we speak, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the Administrator of the EPA, Lee Zeldin, are speaking because they are rolling back, ending, cutting, kaput, the Obama-era EPA endangerment finding. This is a huge deal, the biggest deregulation in American history. Let's hear from the President.
Under the process just completed by the EPA, we are officially terminating the so-called endangerment finding, a disastrous Obama-era policy that severely damaged the American auto industry and massively drove up prices for American consumers.
At 22 minutes past the hour, we are going to bring you more information on this huge story. We'll have more audio and video, including comments from EPA Administrator Zeldin. This ultimately is a $1.3 trillion savings to the American people. They are ending all vehicle greenhouse gas emission standards, and they are getting rid of the much despised start-stop feature in vehicles where your car turns off when you pull up at the light. More on this big story in just a few minutes here on the Scott Jennings Show. In other news, White House border czar Tom Homan was in Minneapolis this morning. He held a press conference. He made an announcement that the federal government is ending Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis. Why? Because they are now getting cooperation from most of the county and city jails in Minnesota. That's a good thing. That's what the president wanted. It's making it easier to get rid of illegal aliens in that state. Homan says they have taken down over 4,000 violent illegal aliens out of the state. And they also found, this is a huge number, they also found 3,000 lost migrant children just in the state of Minnesota alone. Sort of makes you wonder how many more kids are out there in states with much larger populations. Also, Washington is continuing to digest yesterday's blockbuster economic data. There was a big jobs report that beat expectations. We got data showing wage growth outstripping the inflation rate. That's critical. And now we find out we have the smallest federal government workforce since 1966. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Jennings had this to say about all of it, taking a bit of a victory lap. Here's Jennings in Cut 19.
This is what we've been setting the table for all of 2025. I've said that repeatedly. We put the necessary ingredients, policies into place, and now they're starting to pay off. And what's more impressive here is the number that you just gave is the total jobs. There were more than 170,000 private sector jobs, and there was about a 40,000 decrease in government jobs. So as I've been saying since this administration came into office, we are reprivatizing the economy.
That was the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Jennings. Another area where we're learning more information about the health of the U.S. economy is in the housing market. Right now, median rents in this country, according to new data, are at a 4-year low. I don't think there's any coincidence that as we exit illegal populations from the country to the tune of 2.7 million so far, that you're seeing rents come down in this country. We have audio of the Director of Housing for the United States, Bill Pulte. Let's hear from him in Cut 20.
Well, I characterize us as having good momentum thanks to President Trump. You know, Biden destroyed the housing market for 4 years, Sandra. If you can think about it, mortgage rates went up almost 8%. Now we recently saw a 5%, a 5 handle on mortgage rates. That's a huge victory. We're headed the right direction. We still have work to do. But obviously with these slam dunk economic numbers and everything else that we're doing in the housing market, I'm very confident that we're going to get the American dream back. It's just a darn shame what happened these last 4 years. And boy knows we have our work cut out for us.
Yeah. More on the U.S. economy in just a moment. The breaking news right now in the United States Senate in Washington is that the Save America Act, this is the bill that would require citizenship proof to register to vote and also voter ID in federal elections, now has 48 Republican co-sponsors in the United States Senate. Senate Majority Leader John Thune joined on to this morning. He appeared on Fox News, in fact. Why don't we hear from Senator Thune? This is Cut 16. Here's what he had to say.
They can cry and lament this actually being voted on, but I'd be hard-pressed to have to defend a position that doesn't believe that you have to be an American citizen to vote in an American election.
Now, we spoke to Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn in the last hour on this program. She's been a strong supporter of the Save America Act. And she says she believes when the Senate comes in that leadership will bring this to the floor of the United States Senate. The breaking news is 48 Republicans are co-sponsoring the Save America Act. There are 53 Republicans in the Senate conference. So we will continue to track that story. This is Scott Jennings. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People here on Salem. More news out of Washington. Looking in on our friend, Senator John Fetterman out of Pennsylvania. Really fascinating conversation that he had yesterday on CNN with Dana Bash. He was asked about what's going on with the federal government right now. Is Donald Trump engaged in retribution? Who is actually worse? Who is actually worse in Washington, D.C.? You will want to hear Senator John Fetterman's answer to this question. Let's hear that.
You said, quote, I've drunk deeply of the venom of both the left and the right. As a connoisseur, I can confirm that the most poisonous, the bitterest, is from the far left. That is pretty remarkable to hear you say that as an elected Democrat. Why?
It's just been my personal experience on this thing. And when I asked my digital team, I said, we're on all the platforms. Really, what's kind of the harshest? What's kind of the most personal? And the answer was immediate. He said, "Oh, blue sky. It's blue sky." And the difference is, the right would say really rough things and names. Some names I won't repeat on TV, but the on the left, it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke, or that's terrible that depression won. Why couldn't it depression won? And I hope your kids find you.
That was Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania talking about the climate in Washington, D.C. His opinion, and he's a Democrat, is that it's far nastier on the American left right now. And what are John Fetterman's sins? He broke party orthodoxy on supporting Israel. He has said that voter ID is common sense. He's asked for common sense words and policies on immigration. And for that, you hear how he is personally treated. There's some late polling coming in from CNN. This was reported this morning on CNN by their polling director, data guru Harry Enton. I'm going to read it to you. The question put to the American people was, is the Democratic Party too liberal? Is it too liberal? In 1996, 42% of Americans said yes. In 2013, 48% of Americans said, yes, it is too liberal. But right now, the answer to this question right now, as we begin 2026, 58% of the American people believe that the Democratic Party is too liberal. And as we just heard from John Fetterman, the more liberal they get, the nastier they become. When we come back, we are going to get more out of Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, and President Trump as they end the Obama-era endangerment finding. A quick word, by the way, on aches and pains from our friends at Relief Factor. The latest story from listeners. Another satisfied customer comes from Keith in Washington. A very active man, former college athlete, martial arts instructor, was teaching multiple classes a day. Over time, all this activity was wearing him down. And after trying Relief Factor, what happened to Keith in Washington? Well, his knee pain completely disappeared. Neck pain down significantly. He was able to keep training, and he was ultimately able to earn his black belt. We're hearing from listeners across the country. They have active lifestyles. The pain creeps in. They can't do anything about it. They get on Relief Factor, and voila, things start to get better, and they are able to do what they want to do with their lives. If you would like to move easier, if you would like to stay active, if you would like it that aches and pains do not control your life, try Relief Factor's 3-week quick start. See how it works for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. When we come back, more on the EPA endangerment finding announcement. It's Scott Jennings on Salem.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
Breaking news into the show, and a massive victory for common sense energy policy in the United States of America. In the last few minutes, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin formally ended the Obama-era climate endangerment finding. This is the ruling that declared greenhouse gases a threat to public health and welfare. And that rule has been used ever since as the legal backbone for sweeping federal climate regulations that have materially made your life worse. If you don't follow the regulatory weeds, let me translate. This was the legal weapon that empowered Washington bureaucrats to regulate virtually every corner of the American economy in the name of climate policy. Cars, trucks, power plants, manufacturing, energy production. For 15 years, that finding has been the regulatory foundation for rule after rule after rule, and today that ridiculous, wrong-headed foundation was obliterated by President Trump and EPA Administrator Zeldin. So what does this mean? It means that Unelected regulators don't get to unilaterally restructure the American economy without Congress. It means that the regulatory straitjacket on coal and natural gas and American manufacturing just got looser. And it means that we start making energy decisions based on reliability, affordability, and national security, instead of on climate ideology drafted by progressives in conference rooms. This is about restoring balance for the American people. Because here is the absolute truth. You cannot run the greatest economy in the world on hope and windmills. You need baseload power. You need energy that you can count on at 2 o'clock in the morning on a cold January day. You need energy that keeps hospitals running and factories humming and data centers online. Now, some people think the damage has already been done. The Obama-Biden legacy is one of shutting down coal plants and driving up prices while endangering grid reliability. They closed 40% of all U.S. coal capacity, 290 power plants closed. And folks, if you're wondering why your electric bill went up, that's why. But that brings me to yesterday, where at the White House, President Trump hosted a major event celebrating the return of American coal and energy workers. Let me tell you something, coal is not dead. Let's hear from Peabody CEO Jim Gretsch. He was there. He spoke about the importance of coal to grid stability and energy security. Cut 22.
Mr. President, we stand here today representing the thousands of coal miners across the country to express our deep gratitude to you, sir, for the actions you've taken to support our industry. Your leadership and decisive actions have sent a powerful message. We have a president who, more than any other, deeply understands the importance of coal in supporting the future of this nation.
It's the part that climate activists never want to talk about when demand spikes, as it has recently, when the wind isn't blowing, when the solar output drops, coal and natural gas and nuclear and other things, they keep the lights on. That's not politics, folks. That is just physics. And that brings me back to today, where Administrator Lee Zeldin of the EPA made this clear moments ago about restoring some rational behavior in our national policy making. Here is Cut 24.
Under President Trump's leadership today, the Trump EPA has finalized the single largest act of deregulation in the history of the United States of America. Referred to by some as the holy grail of federal regulatory overreach, the 2009 Obama EPA endangerment finding is now eliminated.
You can debate climate policy, and many will. You can debate emissions targets, and many will. But what you cannot debate, the American energy grid has to work for the American economy to grow. Rolling blackouts are not compassion. Sky-high utility bills are not what I would call progress. Grid fragility is not leadership. What Trump and Zeldin have done just in the last few minutes was common sense. It was pro-working class America, pro-manufacturing, pro-stability on our grid, pro-national security. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is a big day because common sense has won out, and it is another promise kept by President Donald Trump as he has fixed, absolutely fixed, one of Obama and Biden's most destructive legacies. When we come back, more on health care, specifically more on PBM reform and how it is going to benefit your life. You don't want to miss this conversation. It's common sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings. You're listening to us on Salem. Stay with us.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Thursday, February 12th, and this just into the Scott Jennings Show. It looks like the Department of Homeland Security will shut down tomorrow night because Senate Democrats have just rejected the funding package that was on the floor. Now, ICE will remain open. Democrats don't appear to know or care that this is only going to impact things like TSA, Coast Guard, and other agencies that are housed inside of DHS, but that's the way the vote came down just a few minutes ago. DHS likely to shut down tomorrow night. Thanks to Democrats, we will keep an eye on this. President Trump signed a major healthcare reform issue into law the other day. It's called PBM reform. That stands for Pharmacy Benefit Managers. It's been a long time coming, and it will make drugs cheaper and more accessible for you. In just a moment, we'll chat with Lori Riley, the Chief Operating Officer for PhRMA. That is the National Trade Association for America's Biopharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers, who just yesterday, I should add, testified before Congress. We'll talk to her in just a moment. First, a quick word about vacations. My advice, you should book one, and I think you should go on a cruise with me in November. It's called the Gulf of America Cruise. I'll be there all week on this ship, luxury ship. I want you to be there as we sail on the turquoise waters, put our feet on the white sand beaches, eat the incredible food, and have insightful conversations about the future of our country. My friend, the legend here from Salem, Mike Gallagher, will also be there. We're going to have interesting conversations with each other and with all of you about the future of our country and the issues shaping America. We're going to do it while we honor the 250th anniversary of our nation. It is the Gulf of America Cruise with Jennings and Gallagher. Book your cabin today. If you're interested, text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America Cruise banner. Text the word cruise to 94878. Now, I'm excited to have with me on the show Lori Riley, the Chief Operating Officer from PhRMA, the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. She's been with PhRMA for over 2 decades. She is one of the 250 most influential people in Washington, D.C. There's been a lot of news in the healthcare space this past week, particularly as it pertains to the insurance marketplace, PBMs, and how Americans are able to access medication. President Trump just launched his new direct-to-consumer platform called Trump RX. Congress finally passed a reform package dealing with these pharmacy benefit managers, the PBMs, and the Trump administration's Federal Trade Commission just announced a major settlement with a PBM called Express Scripts. All of these things have major implications across the American healthcare landscape, and Lori Riley is one of the few people that I think can help unravel it for you all. She testified before Congress yesterday. Lori, thanks for being here on the Scott Jennings Show.
Scott, thanks so much for having me today.
Really glad to have this conversation. Let's start here. Congress finally passed, and President Trump signed into law a legislative package that contains PBM reform, pharmacy benefit managers. You had pushed for this. Many people in Washington had been championing this for years. It was a long fight, but it finally was completed. Why don't you tell the American people how PBM reform is going to benefit their lives?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. As you noted, this is a long time coming. We've been working on this legislation with bipartisan members of Congress for 7 or 8 years. And the goal really was to do just what you said, lower costs for the American patient when they get to the pharmacy counter. I think a lot of people do not realize just how much control insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers have over whether or not they get the medicine their doctor prescribes, what they pay when they show up to the pharmacy counter. You know, PBMs and their insurance companies, they negotiate with the pharmaceutical companies. That's a good thing. But the discounts and rebates they receive that lower the prices we take home, a lot of that money was not going back to the patient, and it wasn't going back to the employers who often pay for the insurance. This bill is going to help change that. It brings much needed transparency, so employers are going to have a much clearer idea of where the dollars that are being negotiated on their behalf and on behalf of patients, where the money goes. And it also says PBMs can't be self-dealing anymore, right? As it is right now, they often prefer higher priced medicines when lower priced medicines are available because they make more money when they do that. This bill helps change that. And it says, you know what, we're going to pay you a bona fide fee for what you do, but no longer are you're going to be able to make fees that are attached to the list price of a medicine, which not surprisingly means that they prefer medicines with a higher price than those with a lower price, which is not in the best interest of patients.
Lori, for the record, will this PBM reform lower prices for the American people, and will it improve access to medications?
Yes, I think this is a really, really strong step. More work to be done. I'm going to be honest with that. This is the beginning, I think, of a much needed work. But as you noted, both the Department of Labor under the Trump administration recently announced a proposed rule that's going to take this even further. And for the first time ever, the Federal Trade Commission entered into a very large consent decree with one of the largest insurance PBM companies that require them to do a whole host of things, all with an eye towards lowering what patients pay at the pharmacy counter.
Yes, you're referencing the Federal Trade Commission announcing a settlement with one of the big three PBMs. It's called Express Scripts. As you noted, this will have a big impact on the healthcare sector. Tell us a little more about that. Why should people pay more attention to this? I feel like this is one of those things that we discuss and maybe folks don't deeply understand it, but this is part of the machinations of government that really make an impact on what people are paying for their health care.
Totally agree. You know, today, half of every prescription drug dollar spent in the U.S. goes to someone other than the companies that invent the drug and manufacture the drug. So think about that. We take home about half of every dollar sold. The other half goes to someone in this convoluted supply chain that is taking money out of the system. One of those big players is pharmacy benefit managers and their insurance companies. Today, 1 out of every $4 of a branded medicine that is sold in the U.S. goes back in the pocket of a pharmacy benefit manager and their insurance company. And that's $170 billion a year. If we take that money and instead of it going back in the pockets of a PBM and an insurance company, and instead goes into the pockets of the American patient, we can lower what people pay for their medicines in the U.S. These kinds of reforms are really, really necessary right now to address some of the affordability issues that American patients are facing.
That voice you're hearing is Lori Riley. She is the Chief Operating Officer from PhRMA, which is the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, one of the most important policy people in Washington, D.C. Lori, the FTC settlement with Express Scripts is just the first potential stone to fall on this issue. As I understand it, they also have pending investigations with other large PBMs as well. Notably, I think the Express Scripts settlement also required these PBMs to bring back to America some of these operations that they had set up offshore. These things are called group purchasing organizations. We heard a lot about this during congressional hearings. Tell us about this issue, kind of an under-the-radar thing, but give us some insights on how this is going to benefit American consumers.
Yeah, great question. So, you know, these PBMs negotiate with pharmaceutical manufacturers, and in exchange, we provide discounts or rebates back to the PBM, again, with the goal of lowering the costs that patients pay for their medicine. Over the last couple of years, more and more people have become wise to the fact that they were getting billions and billions of dollars in rebates and discounts that were going back in their coffers, but not all of that money was getting shared back with the employers that were paying for the health insurance or with the patients that needed the money. So what they did is set up these offshore operations. They're in Dublin, Ireland, and Switzerland, out of sight from the employers, out of sight from the regulators, and started collecting fees from companies. They said, hey, people know about the rebates. Let's move our money-making operation to instead ask companies for fees. And these fees that we then now have to pay to these PBM GPOs are, again, out of sight of the regulator, out of sight of patients and employers. Those were going back into their coffers and not being used to reduce the cost of what they pay at the pharmacy counter, what their premiums were, et cetera. So the Federal Trade Commission said, hey, time to move those back to the United States and have them be under the applicable rules and regulations that any company that operates in the U.S. would have to abide by.
Okay, Lori, I'm just going to tell you as a lay person and on behalf of the American people, there's a lot of acronyms here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terminology that most people aren't using on a daily basis. It sounds to me, and I hope this is true, it sounds to me like what President Trump and the Congress has done here is begin to unravel something that's extremely complex, something that's completely opaque to most consumers, and this unraveling is going to lead to lower prices and more access for the American people. Is that how you would describe it?
That's exactly how I would describe it. I think over time, this system has gotten intentionally complex, intentionally opaque, and that is being done again, so that most people give up. They say, I can't understand this system.
Right.
I don't know why my medicine isn't covered. I don't know why I'm paying what I'm doing. So these initial steps are steps in the direction of saying we're going to get rid of the opaqueness in the system. We're going to add transparency and disinfectant to open up this system so that people actually understand what they're paying for and what they're getting for when they pay their insurance premium.
Lori Riley is the Chief Operating Officer with Pharma. We've got about a minute to go, Lori. I want to ask you about Trump RX, this new government website. It is a big initiative of the White House to lower drug prices for consumers. What's the industry's take on Trump RX?
I think this is a response to what we're seeing in America today, where you have an increasing number of people who are being told they can't get access to the medicine they need. It's not available on their formulary, or they're being asked to pay a lot of money for it. Today, 80 million people have a high deductible health plan. 27 million people are uninsured. These options, like Trump RX and other direct-to-consumer platforms, are an option for those patients to be able to shop around and get a price, even people with insurance, that may be lower than what their insurance company got for them.
Lori Riley, the Chief Operating Officer from Pharma. Maybe you've not heard of Lori, but if you're in and around Washington, D.C., she is one of the most important people in Washington when it comes to dealing with and setting healthcare policy. Lori, really honored to have you on the show today. We appreciate your perspective, and we'll hopefully have you back in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott, so much.
Okay, Lori, thank you. This is the Scott Jennings Show. You're listening to us on Salem. I want to give you a word about some new friends of mine. They run a company called Patriot Mobile. When it comes to wireless service, here's what you may not know. You can actually choose a wireless company that shares your values. In fact, they invest in your values. It's called Patriot Mobile. They are a wireless provider, but they're more than that. They're an activist organization that funds their conservative activism by selling top-tier cell phone service. They'll do what other companies are afraid to do, and that's actually invest in their own values. I know the executives of this company. I've met with them. I trust them. They put their money where their mouth is. They are Christian conservatives. They believe in what you believe in. When you pay your bill, they take that money and they fund and fuel the Christian conservative cause. If you switch to Patriot Mobile, you can keep your number, keep your phone, or you can upgrade. My advice, take a stand today. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code SCOTT, and they will give you a free month of service. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. When we come back, Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman is here. It's Common Sense on Salem. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
Home stretch here on Thursday, February 12th, wrapping up the show today with a good friend of mine. He's doing terrific work defending children from the dangers that lurk on the internet. Welcome back to the show, Kentucky Attorney General Russell Coleman. Russell, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Scott. I wish it were under better circumstances, a little bit brighter topic, but the threat is what it is, and we have to talk about it. Thank you.
We really do, and the topic is this. You all are no doubt aware of this mass shooting that happened up in Canada, committed by the transgender shooter. And now, thanks to some sleuths on the internet, we have found out that this shooter had a Roblox account. Roblox is an online game played by hundreds of millions of children. And in that account, he made his own game within a game, one of which was called Mall Shooting Simulator, where people were being exposed to, on Roblox, a simulated mall shooting. I think we can put it up on the screen. It's cut 11. We're going to mute the audio, so if you're watching on Salem News Channel, you can see this mall shooting simulator. Very disgusting stuff. If you're listening on the radio, what you're seeing here essentially is an online game that allows kids to do things and expose children to very violent behavior, very violent ideas, such as shooting up a mall. And that transgender shooter in Canada did this. And again, the road goes back to Roblox, which already has problems. Russell Coleman is the Attorney General of Kentucky. Russell, you're already after Roblox because they are not doing enough to protect children from groomers inside the game. When you see this development today, how does it strike you? Is this going to become part of your lawsuit against the company?
Let me just start with where I will finish, Scott, and say the only safe way to mitigate this threat is to get your kids off Roblox. If there's one thing that parents hear, grandparents, get your kids off Roblox. What your listeners and viewers are seeing is one of the dual threats, the content that Roblox hosts. It calls itself these experiences. You could have just as easily, Scott, been demonstrating what a Charlie Kirk assassination simulator looked like within minutes of losing Charlie. You could have just as easily shown hundreds of exemplars of bathroom experience simulators where an avatar, one of our kids' characters, is sexually assaulted right in front of the player. This is filth. It's dangerous, and we've seen what happens if it's not mitigated, how it metastasizes with this loss of life in Canada.
Russell, you are one of the leaders in America going after Roblox here. It's obvious that you don't think they are doing enough to protect children. Give us an idea of the scope and scale. We're talking about hundreds of millions of accounts on Roblox, correct?
It's stunning. 380 million users a month. That is an incredible number. And so many of your listeners, viewers, will recognize that cartoonish, seemingly non-threatening image that you've seen your kids and your grandkids. It looks safe. Scott, I even heard one of my colleagues, a tough prosecutor, an attorney general from another state, a mom, say when we were being briefed on this, oh, Roblox, that's the safe one, isn't it? And it is not safe. Clearly, it's not safe because of the content, like this filth we saw up in Canada that's just emerging. But the other threat, Scott, is Roblox is a playground for predators. It is not only hosting this horrendous content, like the mall simulator, allegedly, but it's also allowing young people to sign on and appear to be older. And more threatening, it's allowing adults to sign on and pretend to be kids, start talking to our kids, and get them off of Roblox to an encrypted platform that's even harder for law enforcement to engage in. So this is a company that says it's acting safely, and that's what our lawsuit is about in Kentucky, in Louisiana, in Florida. It's pretty basic. You don't have to understand technology. The lawsuit says if you say your widget that you make, if you say your platform is safe, which Roblox does, but yet we know demonstrably it's not safe, then you are violating our consumer protection statute in Kentucky, and we're going to come after you with everything we've got.
That voice you're hearing, one of the foremost defenders of children in America. He is the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. His name is Russell Coleman. Here in Kentucky, we call him the long arm of the law, former FBI agent and former U.S. Attorney. Russell, thank you for joining us. The bottom line is there is violent content on Roblox. It's despicable and disgusting. There are groomers and predators on Roblox, and Russell Coleman's advice is get your kids off of it. That is all for me. I'm taking a couple of days off, going off the grid. I'll be back next week. You'll be in good hands here with Jen tomorrow and Monday. It's common sense for the American people. Scott's out. Thanks for listening.